Before that, a lot of terms used to be thrown at me, whether it is carbon emissions or ESG. It was very dystopian kind of a view. It always felt like there is nothing that I can do about it.
Let me end with this question. Give me an engineer's take on how to hit $250 million revenue.
Economic model assumed that all the natural resources came for free. The water, the air, the minerals. We just assumed that they were for free. That is really how the economy has developed.
If you live in Delhi, every winters you would realize the impact of climate change. And if you're a startup founder, you should realize that large consumer problems lead to multi-billion-dollar business opportunities. And probably the area which will bring about the next billion-dollar companies is climate change. In this episode of the Founder Thesis podcast, I'm speaking to a serial entrepreneur, Rohit Toshniwal. Rohit sold his last business for more than $100 million to VMware. He's a hardcore techie using the power of tech and AI to help companies with ESG. What is ESG? E stands for environment, S for social, G for governance. Just as a P&L tells investors about the financial health of a business, the ESG metrics tell the world at large about how sustainable and responsible a company is. And increasingly, it is becoming a mandate to report your ESG numbers. Keep listening to figure out how ESG is the next massive opportunity for tech to conquer. I'm your host, Akshay Dutt, and this is the Founder Thesis podcast. So, Rohit, you are in what looks like a really lush green campus, and you're also in the green tech industry. What brought you here? Give me a little bit of context.
Sure, Akshay. So it's been an interesting sort of a story how we landed over here. So earlier I used to be in internet infrastructure kind of it, and at one point in time I sort of took a break, and that is where I met my co-founder Akash. Both of us left our sort of the deep tech jobs, trying to figure out what to do next, and we landed up in a nonprofit that has been called 14 Trees that has been working on the issue of completely wasted land. And neither of us had come earlier from sustainability background or climate science background. And that is where we learned the ABCs of why it matters. So before that, when I used to look at some of these aspects like climate, and largely it got shaped during the COVID period. I mean, that was a period when it reset a lot of people, how they look at the nature, etc. And I was one of them. And that is when I reached 14 Trees and started spending serious time over there. Before that, a lot of terms used to be thrown at me, whether it is carbon emissions or ESG or the world is going to fall apart. And while it was very dystopian kind of a view, it always felt like there is nothing that I can do about it or we can do about it. People who are not directly, let's say, involved in the climate space. But while working at 14 Trees, we started learning the basics of what all of this means. Before that, my view of economy, and by the way, I bring a very economic view or a capitalist sort of a view when it comes to doing things. And I've always believed that if you have to bring in big changes, the way to bring them in is through economy and by providing capital and by focusing on the right set of things. So once we were at 14 Trees, we started learning that the economic model, in some ways, the way it has developed over the last 200 years, assumed that all the natural resources came for free. The water, the air, the minerals that are used in all the economic activity, we just assumed that they were for free, extractive nature of economy, and we would build on them and sell and generate profit kind of it. And the more the growth or the bigger the company, it really depended on how much extraction you can do about it. And that is really how the economy has developed. And this forced us in this path where we are right now, where suddenly climate change and other things have become very, very serious. And all the scientists have started looking at it. While there can be differences in the time that it will take, for us to get to point of no return. Everyone agrees on those parts. And while this was going on, that is when the governments across the world sort of woke up to this, that the path cannot go in forever, and the realization that if we have to manage economy in a way so that it starts using natural resources also into the accounting, there needs to be a way to measure what a company is doing. And that is really what led to the start of what we call the ESG reporting, etc. So prior to that, initially
What
when
is
the
the
companies start,
ESG in
so
ESG?
E stands for environment, S stands for social, and G stands for governance. So what used to happen is earlier the companies were assumed to only work for the profit motive, that it is only the shareholder value and it is the profit that a company really needs to care about it. But then the realization came in that as entities, the companies need to look at more. And this cannot be just the financial measures, but how a company interacts with its communities, whether there is an inclusiveness over there or not, equity there or not when it comes to the communities over there, whether the governance structures, things like bribing or the practices which are there are important. So they were about governance. And the most important one being the environment. So what it meant is that if as a company I'm involved in any economic activity, then I need to start paying attention on the natural resources that I'm using, either directly or indirectly. And I'm supposed to report on them. Because if only when there is a good, clear reporting of what I'm doing, can the two companies really be measured around it. And when we look that number of parameters, there can be more than thousands of parameters, and it becomes very, very hard. So these standards started getting developed. So the idea is to get to a uniform, the way we look at, for example, EBITDA and other things, right? Currently, when we have to measure two companies on their financial performances, there are very, very standard ways, and you can pick a report and read through it and figure out what's happening at a financial level. Similarly, we need a way to be able to measure the environmental performance of a company, the social and the governance performance of the company, and that is when the ESG sort of the reporting came into picture. So
One
while
question here.
mm,
Is it a legal mandate? So, for example, there is a legal mandate for companies to report their financial numbers, like the
uh-huh.
EBITDA, the profit, all of
Yes,
those
yes,
things,
yes,
and the balance sheet. Is there a legal requirement to report ESG numbers? And what
yes.
numbers are getting reported?
So yes, and this will be a journey, right? Like anything else. So economies across the world, I mean, Europe definitely took a lead on some of this stuff after the Paris Agreement, etc. When the Green Deal kind of it came, and they came up with a CSRD requirement, which almost said that any company which is operating in Europe now
You said
need to report
CSRD requirement.
CSRD. So CSRD, basically what it says is that the companies now need to report on their sustainability. So it's a sustainability related report directive that came out by Europe, and the way it mandated is that if there is any company working in Europe, now they need to report on what they are doing on the sustainability side. It's a very comprehensive report, and of course there were precursors to it, and there have been different versions around it. But you brought a good point. The way the financial reporting is required, it's now a mandate, but it was never not always a mandate kind of it, right? And if you remember things around child labor policies, etc., it was not always a mandate. It took us a few good decades to get to a point where we are right now. Similarly, we are seeing similar kind of a progress happening when it comes to the reporting on non-financial disclosures as well. And the way it starts in any economy is first you take the largest players and then you say you have to report. Initially, it starts with voluntary disclosures, certain aspects of the disclosure, like what you are doing within your own premise and operations, and then you have to bring into the fold your supply chain. So it has been sort of a progression that has been going on, and that is how we are seeing it evolve. For example, we are in India right now, right? So in India, the top 1,000 companies now are mandated to report what is called a BRSR report. Similarly, Europe came up with the CSRD requirement, and similarly, other economies have been coming up with these requirements, which require companies to first A, start measuring on them, then B, start reporting on them, then C, starting to get them audited. And these will be treated in the same way that the financial disclosures are. And then there are penalties and other measures which come through any regulations, which are the way governments control on in what direction the companies need to move on to. So that's one of the things. But going back on
Uh, One more question I want to get in. If I am a company which doesn't legally need to report ESG numbers, do I care about reporting them? Or, I mean, is
so
this
good.
just another checkbox for someone in the admin team to just fill out? Or,
Very
do I care
important
about
question.
my ESG report?
Very important question, Akshay, over here. And so again, like all hard questions, the answer is not a clear black and white kind of it, right? So while we talked about compliance, that has become a major push, which has brought under its ambit hundreds of thousands of companies across the globe, kind of it, right? Which becomes a big push. But as companies start looking at it, there are other aspects also which becomes very important. Reputation risk, for example, it's a huge thing, and largely because as you and I, common man, when they look around climate change, I mean, it is no more a theoretical thing. Almost everyone is aware about the change in the weather patterns, the floodings and the droughts that are happening. The once in a century kind of events now are occurring more and more, and this has brought the aspect of climate and sustainability to what we call the main street in certain ways, right? And where people care about it. So people have started looking at companies, their brands and reputation, and started favoring companies which are seen as more socially responsible, more sustainable, and that has resulted in a lot of movements that have been going in the world, and especially we there have been studies which say that the younger generation, they definitely are more aware of these things, and at the same time they are also more hopeful that something can be done about it, not like that, hey, this is the way things have been going on for multiple generations and that is how it is going to happen.
So,
So that is another area.
you're saying
The
that ESG should be something that concerns the CMO, like it'll help him build a better brand, attract Gen Z,
so
but not the
so
CFO.
It's both. See, CFO cares about the regulation part of it, and that is why they look at it like the ESG aspects. There are companies and investors who cannot look at you unless your ratings are above a certain thing, something that has happened with governance, etc. Right? All of these large investors have certain rules around which company they can invest in and which company they cannot, and clearly it is going in that direction. The governments across the world have been through the banking system, etc., have started making finance available for companies which are going to be more sustainable. So in those ways, the CFO definitely and the CEO and the board definitely cares about it. For the CMO and the common man, while the term ESG might be esoteric and some of these reportings might be, but how a company is seen, right? Whether they talk about sustainability, whether they lead discussions with sustainability, etc., becomes very important. And I can give a couple of examples over here. Some companies, for example, Patagonia, right, one of the fashion or textile manufacturer in Europe, right? They are seen as a very environment friendly kind of it. Similarly, companies like REI, etc., they have a lot of focus on environment, and they have a very committed and loyal fan following, people who will go over there. Whereas other companies at times have seen a lot of backlash. For example, Volkswagen, right? When that issue happened, when they were not reporting the efficiency of their cars, etc., correctly, they took a huge hit. And largely, a lot of this was also consumer driven in many ways. The way companies build brand around trust. For example, Tata's in India, right? They have developed huge respect among the populace because they are seen as a very social company kind of it. So there are these angles. Then even so, this is from a reputation side of it. Then from hiring. When it comes to attracting talent pool, people are now wanting to work with companies which are seen as more forward looking, future looking, And clearly, environment plays a huge part in that. For a CFO, there are other aspects. So, one, we talked about the compliance, but then there are actually physical risks that a company needs to manage. For example, if they have operations in certain places, their supply chains. I mean, with all the climate change, the climate yield has started changing significantly. The availability of the resources that economy has depended has become a little erratic depending on what you are looking at. And those are also some real risks as a company that the company needs to look into. And in order to, like energy dependence, right? That is a huge area. And while a lot of green energy has been seen as that, hey, we need to be green, etc., there is also an energy dependence kind of it that the companies have to really deal with. And they are looking at some of these innovations in these spaces to help with them too.
The
And
E
there
part
are,
in ESG is
uh,
largely about carbon emissions reporting, like carbon
uh,
footprint reporting, or
so
anything else also.
So E is actually much broader, environmental. But the analogy that I give you is if you go to a doctor and let's say you are feeling sick or not feeling okay, they first take your temperature, right? It gives you sort of a measure whether things are okay or not. So environment is very, very complex. I mean, it needs to look into the biodiversity, availability of the species, what we are doing with them. But if you throw a lot of stuff at someone, it becomes very, very hard to comprehend. So the carbon equivalence, so CO2e, what we call carbon dioxide equivalence, has become a good sort of a measure, which is an easy measure to know how much quota we have left, how much, I mean, more extractive of the nature that we can be before we get to point of no returns kind of it. So that is how the carbon emissions has become sort of central when it comes to reporting, right? This is the first thing that
Can you
I'll
zoom
do
in
if
on
I.
this CO2e,
So,
the
so
CO2 equivalent?
what it means is the Earth's atmosphere, as we say. We are what we call Earth's atmosphere, and Earth has been what we call the Goldilocks zone, right? You go a little here or there, and the life would not have existed. All of us have read this in our high school science, right? When we did our schooling and all. And this balance has been very, very delicate. And you move this a degree here or there, and then there are huge implications on the climate system in the world, the ecosystems which have been sort of supporting the entire lives, etc. So, over the last many decades, as the scientists have been looking at it, hey, what do we measure? What is that single thermometer kind of a measure that we do to say how bad is situation? So the atmospheric temperature, the average atmospheric temperature, right, in comparison to the pre-industrial revolution era, is seen as that number. And you will hear these terms like, are we 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial era, or when are we going to hit the 2 degree centigrades kind of it? And there have been a lot of simulations that have been done that once we breach these boundaries, so this delicate balance in the Earth's ecosystem will get affected in ways where it will be very, very difficult or impossible to come back to point of no return. Sort of it get becomes into that negative feedback loop. And in order to measure that, and carbon dioxide has been one of the gas present in it, which traps heat, and that is how the Earth's atmosphere get affected. Now, what equivalence means is when we look at other gases like methane, which is significantly more harmful on a per unit basis, kind of it to trap heat, etc. We convert everything into carbon dioxide equivalence. So it becomes an easy measure for a company to say, okay, on a per ton basis of whatever you are producing, or a unit economics basis, what is your carbon emission? So it allows apples to apples sort of comparison between companies which are operating, let's say, in the same sector. Of course, across different sectors, these numbers will be very different. For example, an IT company, their emissions in a year might be something that, let's say, a cement or a coal company might have in a week or a month kind of a time, right? But if I compare to aluminum producers and I say that per ton of aluminum that you produce, what your carbon emissions, then I know where the two companies stand at. So this is where the sort of the carbon CO2 equivalence has come in, and this has become the most common thing being talked about. Of course, when the reporting is done, So this sort of jumps into the summary, executive summary part of it. But companies are required to report other things also, whatever they produce or effluent gases or whatever be the side effects of their economic activity, etc. So that is what is required. All of these numbers are put together, and this number is then brought up, which allows people for an easy comparison. And then there are other rating agencies like banks or financial companies. They will take some of these reports and convert it into a rating. For example, there will be a MSCI rating on sustainability, CRISIL rating on sustainability. And the analysts within these companies look into all of these reports in detail and give certain scores to the companies. And everyone would have heard about like these 5-star ratings, etc., for different funds, which have been looking into their performance on the profit side. Similarly, on the sustainability side, these ratings have become important, and the organizations have been looking at them. And similarly, people on the reputation side look at it, how much the company cares about some of these aspects.
So these ratings impact a CFO's job, like a CRISIL sustainability rating, because it
Yes,
would give you better rate of interest, or you would be able to
yes.
attract investment from certain type of funds which have a mandate to only invest in sustainable companies.
So I will answer this way. So when we started Spree, right, our goal was, how do we help companies change their direction from the way they have been doing, and how do we incentivize them so that they don't only care about that certificate, because then it becomes like a flight to the cheapest certificate kind of it. Our goal was, if we can make the CEO, the board, the CFO, and other people more aware of the business opportunities that come with investment in carbon, climate solutions, etc., they will be incentivized to do more. And in our journey, when we started, first it was all about assessment as to where you are, how much you are producing. When we worked with some of these companies, they said, you have told me how much I'm producing, but is this good? Is this bad? How do I even understand that? That is when we said, okay, I will not talk in terms of what other companies in your sector are doing. If you are, let's say, in US producing aluminum, what are other aluminum companies across the world are on a per unit, whatever unit that you care about, kind of it. So this gives the company an understanding of where they are. Then we talk about various different regulations on where they need to be, kind of it, right? So using all of these things, we tell companies why it is matters, and along with it also comes the opportunities on how it will help their top line or the access to the capital. For example, what you mentioned is a very important thing. If your rating is, let's say, very poor on the crystal side, there are a lot of investment houses, doesn't matter how you're doing financially, they will not even look at you by mandate. They cannot look at you, kind of it, right? So that capital is never accessible to you. Similarly, governments across the world are making financing available at at more favorable interest rates, kind of it, right, or an easy access over there. Similarly, another angle which becomes very important, and I want to talk about it because that is why even non-public companies need to care about it. So what has happened is, the companies who need to report, they do not only need to report what they are doing within their operating structure or within their control, they are also required and responsible to report what is happening in their supply chain. So now when an Apple says that they will only want recycled aluminum, let's say, for all their products, now that means that the vendors that they are looking at, who are more sustainable, they will be preferred when the business is given. Same thing we have noticed with our customers. So over the last 2 years, we have been working with close to a couple of dozen customers now. Of course, the journey started with one, then two, kind of it. And there have been companies where we have been working with. These are like large private companies who are in the pharma sector, where they got mandates from the likes of like Pfizer's of the world to say that if by 2025 they are not able to report, then the business will get impacted. And again, Pfizer's of the world are driven by these regulations, right? Largely European regulations and other things. But this company, which is sitting in India, which is doing a formulation manufacture, state of the art facility, doing very good work now, but suddenly now they need to think about sustainability, which they have no expertise on. So they got a bad rating. They worked with us. Kudos to them. They they applied every single recommendation that we talked about. They put in place all the systems that we talked about. And their rating jumped from very poor to the best rating that the Pfizer gives to its vendors. Now becoming the most sustainable vendor, and they were the first in India. Now, in some ways, guarantees business now because Pfizer is on the lookout of companies which are doing sustainable business. The way they cared about like labor policies, child labor policies, etc., governance structure. Now they care about sustain. Now it has become a business advantage, right? And by doing this, now they are guaranteed business, they are expanding. So business advantages. And once this becomes available or known to the people, that is when they are incentivized to do more. The business leaders, right? Now they come and say, hey, what else can I do to establish my leadership or go even further on my leadership, etc. So this becomes, I believe, the best kind of incentive model as opposed to a pure certificate kind of it. And this is where you would also hear terms like greenwashing, etc., right? Especially like EPR, like end product responsibility, etc., where if I'm producing something, I also need to take care of the plastic that I generate, etc. So many times the regulations come early on. It becomes like a gaming system of sorts. That hey, whoever can give me the cheapest certificate over here, probably I'll buy with them because I can continue to do business. I think a little education goes a long way when the business leaders they realize that it is not just for compliance reasons but for good business, right? That is when I think the shift happens, and that's sort of the vision or goal of Spree, our company, as well over here. How to help every single company on the planet find their paths to sustainability. And we believe that we will be able to do that when we tie it to the business value.
Are you a consulting business or a like a SaaS product, or what is pre offering essentially to customers?
Good point again. So, and again, a little on why we are what we are, right? So, as I said, climate science is not new. Last 30, 40 years, research has been going on. There have been niche consulting players out there who has been helping niche companies who cared about. And suddenly, over the last few years, every company that matters is getting pulled into the fold, right? And when we were looking to do something in the space, we realized there are not enough experts out there to help companies in their path to sustainability. And also, our backgrounds, they all probably we'll speak about it in a bit, but all of us came from very deep technology background and had seen how technology can really transform how you do business. And here when we looked at this problem, we felt this is really primed right now, right? Not just that the cause is really really important for all of us as a species kind of it. It's very important from a business angle perspective, and it's something that cannot be taken care of in the ways that things have been done always. So we put our heads together and we said, let's apply deep technology over here. And the idea is to build a product which can help companies, and companies will be at different stages with respect to their sizes, where in their journey they are. And the idea is, how can we help companies or these experts, human experts who exist out there, and make them 100x more efficient in what they want to do. So a company can start with our product even if they have no expertise on the climate side. They just enter their operations data into our product, which is a SaaS offering over here. Behind the scenes, it's a climate AI. It's a very deep climate AI engine that we have built, which drives all of these workflows over here. And the system will tell them about all the things that they need to do, all the reporting that they need to do. That is where it is. Companies which have sustainability team members, or they have been at least at a stage where they know that a team is needed, there the team members use the product, and they become very, very efficient. They do not have any sort of a blindfolds kind of it. And we are also working with consultants over here instead of using Excel, which is really the state of the art right now, right? Very, very complex Excels. That is where the data gets entered using various different mechanisms. Then the results come out, but it is very error prone. It is not efficient. It is not scalable. While you can do this exercise one time, where it becomes a firefighting exercise, doing it on a regular basis, like quarter after quarter, year after year, it becomes very hard. And it's also very error prone, like fat fingering kind of issues become very, very common over there. So we said that there is a significant better way to do it, and by applying technology. So now coming to your specific question, so Sprih is a product company, and we are building a climate AI based SaaS product where we work with companies. We get all of their operations data, whether in their SAP systems or their transport systems or their distribution or manufacturing. We pull all the data from various disparate sites, disparate sources, put it together, and create a picture of where a company stands from their sustainability standpoint, kind of it. And it also allows them to figure out a path forward, doing various different scenario analysis. Where do they need to reach 10 years down the line? What it means for next 1 year? What are the different avenues? And then once, and helping them set up targets against using globally accepted standards, kind of it. Like there is a term SBTI, science-based targets, kind of it. So when you commit to something, you go through these targets, and then everyone else become aware that what you are committed to do, and you are monitored on them. So we help them set them up, and then we bring the ecosystem partners together to help them achieve any of these things. See, at the end of it, what we help with is creating an action orientedness. We sort of catalyze action, then we help in all decision making and all data management, kind of it. But we just by ourselves, so we can tell you that where you are, solar energy is an option for you, or water reharvesting is an option for you, kind of it, right? Or other companies are using these technology and processes like carbon storage policies. So we allow companies to identify different technologies which are available, but then we also bring the ecosystem partners together and allow them to discover that, and while giving them sort of an idea using our models on the ROI, what kind of investments they are looking, when will the investment pay back, showing them various different opportunities in terms of government incentives, etc. That if you do this, then these are the incentives which are available for you, depending on where you are operating. But since this is all very new, there is also a professional services angle to it, where we bring in the team of experts rather than throwing a product to them and saying this is self-serve. We work with every single customer of ours to get to a point where they are comfortable, where they are trained and using the product well, and then we let them do, but we will always be there. We sign up for their success, not just for using the product, but the way to help hundreds of thousands of companies is only going to be through the product. We just do not have enough people to go to each companies and consult with them.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong in my understanding. You would ingest data like, for example, location of manufacturing plant, what is the raw
Uh-huh.
materials, what is the which you can get from the purchase orders, what is the number of kilometers for which you have to transport the finished
Yeah.
products or the raw materials, and
Yes.
so on and so forth. And this data is then converted into a CO2e kind of a metric,
Yeah.
uh, which is essentially the metric which then the company,
Mm-hmm.
if it was to do it through an Excel sheet, would take maybe 10x or 50x more man hours to actually do that, because there is so much disparate data, which in your system you have some some sort of heuristics that for every kilometer of transportation of 1 ton of material, this much would be the CO2 emissions, or is that how it works?
So, no, very, very good question, and I know what's running in your mind. So, I'll explain using examples, right? So, this is how all the initial reportings were done, right? What you said. So, there are scientific formulas, etc., to calculate, and again, they have been tested in the labs, etc. That when you burn, let's say, a certain amount of fossil fuel, what kind of CO2 emissions, etc., happen. Similarly, when you burn the waste, what happens, etc. So all of these research data sets are available. Initially, companies tried to do this, that hey, enter in Excel, create all these complex formulas, and then do it. And they did it 1 year. Then they tried to do it second year. And then suddenly someone said, no, by the way, the rules have changed. The way the formula is working has changed. Instead of calculating this way, now we are going to calculate some other way. Because in the earlier ways, let's say your supply chain calculation was being double counted, or different categories have been created and you need to report under them, very similar to like accounting, right? There are different heads under which you have to report all the various different numbers. Similarly, in this environment reporting also, those things are there. Now going back to them, that becomes a pain. Now you have got like hundreds or thousands of files to choose. And then you say, oh, by the way, which file do I need to do? You have got like thousands. There are companies, right, whose supply chain, there are like 30,000 vendors kind of it over there. And now you have to deal with all of those 30,000 Excel files, which were sitting either in mail or some SharePoint. And it becomes a hell. And it is not only one time that you have to do. Now what happens is, as things are becoming more and more common, the way we do our like advanced tax filing, right? You have to do every quarter now. You have to report every quarter. Some of the numbers like GST, etc., you have to report every month, kind of thing. And so similarly, world over, there are different regulations over here. And here now people are saying, okay, I now need the report not every annually, I need quarterly. But now, as because of the other impacts that we talked about, the CEO wants to know, hey, at the end of the year, this is where I need to be. Now you tell me where I am, right? I've been 3 months into the year. You tell me where is the trajectory going. I mean, we have become very, very smart in projecting the earnings per share, etc., kind of it. But when it comes to anything around sustainability, etc., it's still living in the like Stone Age kind of things over there. Now, so while the companies were doing reporting the hard way, they were realizing this is not a sustainable way at all. And that is where a need for a much more sophisticated system came in. Now, initially it was all voluntary. Then the auditors came in. Now, every time an auditor comes in, they've got like a sea of data, right? It was hard. So they will take random samples over here. And now they will say, show me the proof for this, show me the proof for that. And again, a firefight happens and the entire organization gets disturbed, kind of it. So our whole point over here is, what if there is a system, so you focus on your operations, what you are doing. The system is continuously ingesting all the data from your ERP systems, from your transport, from your distribution systems. It will never ask you terminology which you were not aware of. It will never talk in terms of CO2e, right? It will know, right, automatically. Okay, you send some material on a truck which was of this year engine kind of it from here to here, and then the rest the system will calculate. And when the time comes to show the report, you don't have to do anything. You click a button and the report will come and you send it. If it's a board meeting, it will prepare the slides for you and you present it over there. So it is not a disruptive exercise every board meeting over here or every quarter, or even more what we are seeing. So there is one of our customers, right? They are a large, one of the US's largest aluminum manufacturer, kind of it. And while they do all of these reporting, which they are required, now they get a ton of requests from their own customers, because now their customers have to do their reporting, kind of it. And they will say, hey, this is the format in which you have to give me the data. And if you have to do like 200, 300 of such requests every year, then you need a large number of people who are constantly doing that. And it is very error prone. For example, as we have been working with some of our companies, one of the things that we do is, while we do not report for the earlier years, we take their earlier year data, because it becomes a good benchmark to see where they are heading. And we have found mistakes in what they had reported to the regulators, etc., right? Because the systems have been sort of not yet fully developed, kind of it. It's been sort of okay. But going forward, these things will attract significant penalties, kind of it, right? So here companies are saying, okay, we need to help our auditors with our system. The audit time goes down from like 3 months to 3 weeks, right? Auditor get huge amount and even before the auditor comes, it's like your tax. You enter data in a TurboTax or a Quicken, kind of it, and it will tell you all the areas, right, where there are red flags which you should resolve before submitting. Otherwise it will attract chances of audit, kind of it. Similar things we do with our companies. We take all of their data, we look at it from different angles, kind of it, and say, no, this is not matching up. Or for your sector, there is this kind of emission which happens in most of the companies, but you have not reported it. So we give them this opportunity, so they take care of all of it. And then when the auditor comes, they get access to the data very quickly. Now it is not like a email ripple effect which happens. A request comes, then 10 emails go out, then 100 emails go out. Everything is present in the system, and we have seen the audit periods go down from like 3 months to 3 weeks, kind of it. So it becomes very, very efficient for everyone. And on top of that, the real value that we see is when the business leaders realize that this is good for their business. For example, some of our customers, they had been doing multiple things, right, without sort of reporting or without even knowing that it matters. Like some of our customers had huge land and they have been doing rainwater harvesting, etc., kind of way, but they never reported. They didn't realize that this is something that matters over here. So we allow them to get an inventory of all the good things also that they are doing. And now, because the system sort of knows that what matters or not, we ask them these questions. By the way, do you do anything in this space? Do you do anything in that space? Anything that comes over here? So nothing is left, and you actually get advantage of all the good work that you are doing. And so when these reports go out, you tend to get better CRISIL ratings, better sustainability, tax kind of it, ratings, etc. kind of it, and it is overall good for the business.
Interesting, interesting. So I can see the parallels with the accounting and financial software. Like, as the disclosure requirements become more complex, the data investors demand becomes more complex. You will need to give guidance and predict what will be your earning per share, for example. So you need more sophisticated tools to help you manage that. Similarly, as environment gets more important, you need sophisticated tools to help you manage your reporting around environment. What is the market opportunity here? How much do you think would a company spend on environment related compliance in a year, and what percentage of that spend could come to a platform like Spree?
So again, this is also an evolving thing, and I'll give a few examples over here. And largely, a lot of times it depends on the threat to the business kind of it, right? So the speed at which people are moving. So when we started, it was very interesting. The earlier company that I did, we didn't even try to sell in India at that point in time. I mean, started the company in 2013, only did the sell initially in the US kind of it. And here, and that was the true of my other co-founders and others, right? Everyone was like that. And here, when this time when we were doing, we started in India. We went global later, kind of it. And when we started, we were like, "Iske who will give money? Who will pay for something like this, etc." And but we realized that it's really how much it matters for the business kind of it. So I gave you example of this pharma company, right, which gets a note from Pfizer. They're really doing very good from business perspective and product perspective and all of that, but there is new sudden angle kind of it. And you'd be surprised at the speed at which we closed the deal. We got an inbound from them, and again from the network, they learned that we are doing something very interesting over here, given our earlier connections with IT. So when we started, we the first platform we deployed was at IIT Kanpur. And again, IIT Kanpur was looking to become net zero over here. They had created a center of excellence, but they did not have visibility about their own data kind of it. I mean, great professors and all the understanding over there, but the data was missing. So it was almost like flying blind kind of it. So when we learned, we said, okay, we'll build something because that is what we know. We don't come from sustainability background, but we know how to build really great products kind of it. And given the interest in the space, we said that is where we will start. So we implemented something. We put together a team, and Adi Kanpur did it, and they got the numbers for the first time. They then presented it in one of the conferences where they called a lot of people from bureaucracy and industry, and that is how a little word sort of went out. And then we got an inbound call from this company, which learned that we are doing something because they had gotten this note from one of their large foreign customers, kind of it, about reporting. They called us and they told us, hey, this is what we need. So my Akash went there on Friday, and on Monday they signed an agreement. I have sold enterprise software all my life, but this was the fastest deal that we had closed, kind of it. So it goes about talking the urgency and the importance of it. By the way, this is not common. Then there are other spectrum also. Let's say you are in an industry there and urgency is not there, right? Then you might want to wait and see what is happening over there. So we are seeing a full variety of companies, even within a sector, people who need it now versus who are going to do it later. Now comes the question of how big the space. I mean, overall, we know that climate solutions, the way it is touching, the numbers are humongous, right? Overall, and we are already seeing in energy, in mobility, huge investments kind of going on. This part itself, which is around, let's say, reporting and decision making systems, etc., here also the size is increasing significantly because it is not just tens of thousands of public companies which need to care about it. These private companies getting into the fold, it means that just about anyone who is participating in the global supply chain, right, really need to care about it. So that is what sort of the size of the market, and that is why we have been very, very excited about it. So the supply. So what happens is, if you are an Apex customer, um, let's say Unilever kind of it, right? You have the wherewithal to put together, let's say, a sophisticated IT system kind of it in place. You can put together a team. You can get some of the best experts as consultants, etc., to help you out. But your thousands of vendors who are supplying to you, and as Unilever, you are now responsible to report for them also, but they do not have these systems out there, right? Neither can they put these complex systems or build them, neither can they get very expensive consultants, etc., over there. And that is where the opportunity for technology companies like us really come in, where we make it very easy so that they can focus on business. I mean, these are typically small companies, right? Promoter driven company kind of it. The management will be like 8, 10 people kind of it, maybe doing um, uh, 10 million, 50 million kind of revenues, etc., or even less than that. But they are required to now sort of report and all of it. So these companies also, it becomes very, very important for them and crucial for them. The price wise, I will say we are still discovering. I mean, together as an industry kind of it. And yes, there is some sensitivity, but there is willingness to do, especially if you are able to unlock the business value also. Then the ask is less about, hey, I don't need this, I don't need that. It is more about
Yeah,
what
it's
more
not a
can I do.
cost, it's an investment then.
Yes, it becomes an investment, and that changes kind of thing significantly. I
Just
mean,
as an
at
example, this pharma
uh,
client of yours, how much do you
uh,
earn from them annually?
so our, again, ticket sizes, etc., we are also in the price discovery phase kind of it. But the pharma company that we talked about in the US, etc., we it's like 100,000 annual subscription kind of a model with that. And what we
100,000
are
rupees, dollars? Or-
dollars, $100,000 we are talking
Wow,
over here.
that's
Yes.
that's
So
pretty substantial
yes,
for.
but it needs to be looked in the light of what the quotes, etc., are coming from some of these large consulting companies. What we are
Right.
realizing is that it is almost like 2.5, 3x of this amount, right? When a and there are reasons, right? These are expensive consultants. The systems are very manual,
Yeah,
kind
you
of it,
would
etc.
typically be
Yes,
like, say, going to an EY or something for this kind of a
yes,
service, and obviously an EY or
yes,
a Deloitte or would have their,
yes.
uh, yeah,
PwC's, EY's, Deloitte's
right,
kind of it. So,
right,
so
right, right.
this is where we are seeing the trends so far, and I am 100% sure that this is going to evolve, because right now we are in the very early phases of this market. I mean, what we are seeing with AI right now, right? That's the talk of the town, and things are changing very, very constantly. Whether it should be a $20 a month kind of a service or a $200 kind of a month kind of a service. So this will sort of start adjusting, right, on how much one is willing to pay, how much it impacts, I mean, your revenue, and also your bottom line kind of it. But what is becoming important is that the people are realizing that this is important, and the implications are big. And as a company, I think we enter into the room, what we are doing right now. Honestly, I think we have just sort of looked at a thin slice of the opportunity right now. I mean, there is a huge, and this is not 1 or 2 year kind of a journey. This is going to be a 10 plus year kind of a journey, right? I mean, there are some very stringent targets. I mean, we as human species will need to meet if we want to keep planet Earth hospitable for the species kind of it, right? So there are 10 years kind of goals. Companies are formulating. They are still learning on how to formulate goals, etc. So yes, right now we have started with measurements and these kind of reportings, etc. But a lot of decision making is going to come. And the interesting things are going to happen when companies get into like business process changes, etc., which really change how it's like ICE versus the EV kind of an example, right? Same thing will happen in pretty much all the industries. In material science, there is huge innovation which is going on right now. What do we do? How do we handle our manufacturing? Huge innovations going on, working on the efficiencies, the circularities, all of those things. As those things come in, the decision making is going to become more and more complex. It will not be possible to handle it using an Excel sheet, while we can do some of them right now. But because that is where sort of the company's needs are, so that is why we are doing that right now, and that is what we are charging based on the market right now. But over the years, I will see a lot more sophisticated things come in, and a lot of other sort of the add-ons and services which will need to happen.
I want to understand the current state of business. So, have you crossed, like, say, $1 million ARR? And by when do you think you'll hit, like, say, a 10 million?
So I'll answer it in a little bit more, give you a little bit more perspective on it. So we started around 3 years ago, and at that time we didn't start with a PowerPoint or a monetization plan, right? At that time, it started more with something is happening. We don't know what is going to happen, but we were sure no one else also knows what's going to happen, right? So these are very interesting times when there is a lot of chaos. People have their opinions, there is no established path. You talk to various different experts and they seem to be contradicting each other on how the future will play out, kind of it. And I believe these are the times when some of the largest companies lay their foundation, right? Whether you look into the search time, right, in late 90s, early 2000s, kind of it. I've seen waves in the virtualization industry. We are seeing a lot of chaos around the AI, kind of it, right? A lot of disruptive stuff happening. And so when we look at that, it becomes sort of a very, very interesting on how this entire thing is going to play out. And so it's in that aspect that I look. Hmm.
Okay, okay, got it. It's super interesting. How, are you still largely India focused or global, or what is your revenue split between domestic and
So
international?
So the first 2 years we were only in India, but early last year we decided to change the structure, and we became a global company. And that is when we started focusing on the US market last year, kind of it. And so we are close to a couple of dozen customers at this point in time. And it again has been a very conscious decision on the choice of customers and sectors. We are working across various different sectors: pharma, chemical, manufacturing, paint, aluminum, cement, and even BFSI kind of things, etc. Also, right? And the goal here is that we can articulate the problems very well. We are sitting with these companies, understanding what their real pain points are and solving them. And we don't want to just replicate a little success that we have and continue to do on that. And the whole idea is, can we walk slow now to build the right muscles to be able to run very, very fast later? And we are taking a very long term view of things over here. It's not a 2 year, 3 year kind of it. As I was saying, when we started, there was, we didn't even know how, what is it that we are going to monetize and all of that. And but we started because we felt there is an opportunity over here. And as we are learning, a lot of very interesting things are coming. We are getting a lot of extremely positive feedback from our customer who are using our product, and saying that this is solving real problems. I talked about the supply chain part of it. We are having some very interesting discussions in very engagements in very complex supply chain kind of places, where they have to deal with like thousands of vendors over here who do not have any system, and how do you get the data in easy seamless ways, which can really, really scale. So that's sort of where we are. So the opportunity is big, and but we plan to sort of build things, build the foundations, and then pick up speed at certain point in time. Right now, we are still in those phases.
Okay, okay, interesting. So, you are a serial entrepreneur. You had a venture before this. Can you kind of like talk me through what the venture was, what you learned from it,
Sure.
the lessons learned from the first time?
Sure. So again, sustainability. While I had been passionate about, it's only been last, as I said, last 4 years kind of it that I got into it. And before that, I was a very bits and bytes kind of a guy. What I call all my previous professional career was around building internet infrastructure kind of companies. And I could literally read hexadecimal of on the wire, right? That when we talk, there are certain protocols, and it all gets converted into hex kind of it. And looking at it, I would figure out what was going on over there. So that's been sort of my background. So I graduated from IIT Kanpur. I did computer science in '99, then went to Silicon Valley. Worked for a couple of, so my first company was a very large company, Cisco. I mean, that is like Google's of today, etc. Kind of it, my dream company. But very soon I realized that probably I'm not cut out for a large company. Right, that even if I don't show up, probably it wouldn't matter, kind of, and that was a very unsettling feeling. And also at the back of my mind, it always was key. I wanted to do something of my own. Right, that is what I was always sort of inspired by, those kind of people, entrepreneurs, right? They always attracted me, kind of. So very quickly, in less than a year, I moved to a startup, worked there, learned a lot. You realize that you know nothing, kind of it, when you work with some of the best people. And that's been one of the things. I've been very sort of privileged in a way that I got an opportunity to work with some of the best people across the board, kind of it. So first startup, it was a great engineering startup. I mean, we built a future product which was many years away, kind of it, etc. But we burnt $100 million for zero revenue, right? So in hindsight, I learned a lot, right? It's not just about what you build. Selling is an equal part of running a business, kind of it, and you need to be very aware of what sells, etc. So it shut down, and it was the 2003 meltdown, when the company shut down on a day's notice, kind of it. And again, in my entire sort of the early journey, I and one of my very close friends, we were together. So we were together in this company. Then both of us joined another company. We were together at IIT as well. Shiv Agarwal, who would be later my co-founder, kind of it. Then we joined another company, and at that time, there was, when this happened, a lot of people were very concerned, sort of, about, hey, what happens to my H1 status? Do I need to go back? Somewhere we were like, what is the worst case? We'll go back, right? We'll get something, kind of it. So we joined another startup right after that. And again, that was in internet security kind of a space. Again, we did some stuff that people considered black magic, kind of it, figuring things on the wire and figure out. Those were also the days of like 0 day attacks, etc. Kind of it. So it was a security product which will stop things on the wire or change things on the wire so that the end system is protected and all of that. That became that got acquired by VMware. So it went high, and then 2008 happened, and suddenly things were tough. And that time, the company was sold to VMware, and that is how I entered into VMware. And again, in this company, I learned a lot. I mean, I was very fortunate to work with some very, very bright and smart people, and they trusted me and my co-founder. I mean, very quickly we were running a large part of the company, and it was almost like you get to do whatever you want to do. Right, whether it is building teams or building products or going and selling, meeting with customers, the entire gamut was open. So there was a lot of trust. And of course, we worked very hard to learn, kind of it. So spent all this initial time doing a lot of learning. So that was always the motive. How do I
What
learn
was
more and more?
VMware's product? Like what?
So this was a firewall product. So this was the first virtual firewall product out there. So it started with something else, and then it got converted into a virtual firewall, and then VMware acquired it, kind of it, and it became genesis of VMware's $1 billion product later. Kind of it. It formed the foundation of it. So that is how I came into VMware. And what I noticed then, while I was over there, I got an opportunity to move to India. So again, my boss, boss, or now an ex boss, right? At that time, he knew that there was this thought of coming back as well, kind of it. So he asked, hey, there was an opportunity to lead VMware in India, kind of it. So he asked me if I wanted to, and I said yes, and that is how I came to Pune. After a couple of years, again, I and my friend, we decided to leave, and we said, this is great. Now let's do something of our own. So we were doing quite well in VMware at that time, but we said, hey, now enough learning. Let's put it all of this into practice. That is when we left VMware with the idea that we will do something again in the virtualization space. That was all it was. And so we started meeting with a lot of people, figuring out what is going on. And we had the good thing at that time was that I sort of knew networking like the back of my hand, right? Whatever is the state of the art over there, I knew all of that. And also, what were different companies doing, kind of it. So we earlier thought we will build something and then raise money, kind of it. So we had some ideas. We ran it with some of the VC friends, and before we know, the term sheets came, kind of it, right? And it was just with a PowerPoint and a few people. Of course, they do all the due diligence, kind of it, to check, do you have the strength to stand through whatever comes your way, etc. And that all came very positive, and we were very fortunate. to have some very good people as investors who themselves have been great entrepreneurs, kind of it. So that's how the Arkin journey started. So what we built over there was, think of it like a Google Maps for the data center. So the idea was that you have these complex data centers, kind of it, and you can figure out what's allowed, what's not allowed, what are the roadways are open, right? So which should not be open, where should be a gate, not gate, kind of it, security checks, etc. So it was a security and networking product that we built for data center operations, and it will also tell you about capacity. When will you run out of capacity? What are the hotspots? What needs to be done? How traffic needs to be diverted, and all of that. So that is what we built, and it became a category leading product in the space, and we got a lot of accolades around that time. It was termed like coming out of dark ages for networking, kind of it. So the way we positioned all the product, and at that time, other companies were also trying to build product in the space, including VMware. So there was one business unit of VMware which loved our product because we sat on top of them, and that is how they would sell. And there was another business unit which was trying to do something that we were doing. So even though we were very small, I think we had put together a really, really rock star team. It was a small team, super capable, lots of single man army kind of people when it comes to be able to do things, and we really beat the heck out of competitors, etc. And so VMware then OEM'd our product. They started hearing from their customers, this is what we needed, kind of it. And again, then VMware came to us, they acquired us, they put an offer, and which was really, really good around that time. And we were like,
How
what
much
is the
was it?
best
Like
sales?
ballpark? How much was
So
it
this
acquired?
was a little north of $100 million kind of a
Wow.
acquisition.
And
Uh,
you had, I
so
think, only raised about 15 million.
so overall, we raised around close to like 20, I would say 20 kind of it
Amazing.
is what we
Amazing.
raised, and it was in 4 years that we got there. So it
Mm.
was a very compressed time and a very, very fast journey. So I and my other co-founders like Shiv and Mukul, right, we had a lot of fun building it, and we realized that it was a little early, but the best sales team for our product was clearly VMware. It was a huge synergy. It was a great outcome for everyone, for investors, for key members, and everyone. So we said this is the right home, but we didn't take it as like the end. We only took it like a pit stop over there. We said, okay, we are still not where we want to be, and that's when the phenomenal growth started happening. Once we got the right distribution platform inside, the product grew like a proverbial hockey stick curve, kind of it. The distribution channel opened throughout the world, and it was a great synergy with the other product selling. And very quickly, we started doubling, quadrupling, right, year after year, kind of it. And the team started growing. It was considered one of the best acquisitions inside VMware, grew very, very fast. And so we continued to run it, and I was there till 2021. That is when I felt that we have reached a very good logical point. We were doing almost around like $250 million in revenue. So build a company from zero to 250 million kind of revenue, etc. And I also felt the next rung of leaders was there. And personally, I I was getting like what I've done so far has been sort of building on top of each other. And then I wanted to really sort of take a clean break, learn things, and then figure what I wanted to do for my next 15, 20 years, kind of it, right? And around that time, as I told you earlier, the COVID had happened. So it resets a bunch of things. As I said, while I could read bits and bytes on the wire, I didn't know where my food came from, right? What I was eating. And so there was very little awareness about these things. So you read about some of these things which look like a very distant for something. While I was sympathetic to these, I did not really have a good understanding of these things. So and during that time, I met Dr. Praveen Bhagwat, who was co-founder of 14 Trees himself, a very successful entrepreneur kind of it. So I started spending more time on the site with him, learning these things. And then when I left, I spent some serious time. And again, as it had to be a destiny, or you call it whatever, I met Akash over there, my co-founder, and Hemant, my other co-founder. And Akash sort of convinced us to get out of our sabbatical, even though it was early, and this is how where we are right now.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Did you stay as a technologist, or did you get into sales and client acquisition as well?
So this is a very interesting question. So I still remember when we were getting acquired. So the HR from VMware comes and he says, are you an individual contributor or are you a leader? Are you an engineering or are you sales? And we were thoroughly confused, right? Because see, as co-founder, I mean, you have to do everything, right? Of course, there are roles, there are people who focus, there are strong suits everyone had. And I have always been an engineer at heart. I've always loved to build things, but at the same time, not it's not just for the sake of solving the puzzle kind of it. It was like, what's the valuable thing to be solved? What's valuable to be done? So somewhere those connects also started happening, and a lot of it based on what I learned in my earlier startups kind of it, right? What not to do in the first startup, then how to do things and how to build that confidence that we can build whatever it wants. But that doesn't mean you start on something, right? There needs to be a context of whatever you are building. So those things were there. So like as happened both in Arkin at H3, I've been very deeply involved in the product side, but all the early customers, I mean, that has to be founder sales. So both I and Shiv, we used to go at Arkin here at Spree, while Akash is largely driving the sales, etc. The early customers going to them, understanding them, because otherwise unless you understand what the customer really needs and the customer understands what you are capable of building, finding the right sort of what we call product market fit, etc., can become very difficult, right? And what I've learned, you do not blindly build what the customer says. You understand what they mean. And then in order to express, they have to express in terms of what they have seen, right? Does not necessarily equate directly. So you have to do this. And you also need to have a very tight control on technology, because you need to be able to know what can be built, right? As time progresses, what can be built is very hard. What we built probably at Arkin could not have been built 10 years ago. What we are building right now could not have been built 10 years ago, because technology has come to a point where what we are doing is possible. So you have to understand what are the needed, the problems that need to be solved, and where does the technology stand right now to be able to build that. Of course, you do a lot of innovation, but it needs to like as they always say, who would be the smartest scientist of all times, and answer is always the most recent one, because they are sitting on the body of work that has been done over the last many centuries kind of it, right? Some of this could not have been done like 1,000 years ago, or 500 years ago, or whatever. So the same way I look at it. So to your question, do you build, do you code, do you sell? Yes, it's all, because I think when you are doing technology product, especially where the core is technology, you need to be both be able to build and able to sell. So
Okay, let me end with this question. Give me an engineer's take on how to hit a $250 million revenue.
see, here also it's very interesting. So, as I said, being very fortunate to work with some very smart people at our earlier company and at this company, we have been blessed with some very smart advisors, right? At times, and one of my advisor told me, it's very hard to build anything, right? The amount of energy that it takes to build anything falls in similar, because you have to give your blood and sweat to whatever you do, right? If you have to build something, so then why not build something which can become very big kind of it, right? And this is also where some of the motivations come in, as I said, in this particular. So like all of us, all the founders, we have worked earlier with startups, we have been fortunate to see some good success kind of it, etc. So there was not this itch of doing something, right? It was more that if you do something, it needs to be meaningful, right? It needs to be done because maybe others are not looking at a problem from that way. And if you hit your best case, then it should really be very valuable kind of it, right? So to your question of how do you build something which can become like a $250 million revenue kind of it, I think you first start with what space you want to solve a problem in, right? Whether it's a yesterday's problem, whether it's a solved problem, whether it's just a cheaper version of something that is successful elsewhere. I mean, there are many choices. There's nothing right or wrong kind of it, but everyone has to sort of decide for themselves. And so here, I think when I look at present time, right, and if I were to say what are the two three things that's really going to shape the future. I mean, definitely AI is one of them. Climate is also one of them. The other is what is happening in the entire biospace, right? Human body and other interactions, kind of it. I see some of these things which will really shape the future for us. And so picking something in these kind of spaces, right? And we are at the intersection of both AI and climate, kind of it. That is where we are. So I feel that A, you have to start in one of those, and B, you have to really think big. And I have always believed in, as long as you have perseverance and determination and the right amount of competency, kind of it, then you become what you say you are, right? If I keep on saying I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this, I believe truly. I mean, call it whatever you want, whether your mind does the trick, whether you do, like when we look back at our earlier journeys, it feels surreal, right? In both cases, if I were to look at Sprih like 3 years ago, it feels surreal. How did we come this far, kind of it. Similarly, when I look at the 10-year journey and Arkin, kind of it feels like, can I do that again? I mean, you almost feel like that, and so. But you eventually become what you are. You start working just keeping one goal in mind, and then you are so maniacally focused towards that you start identifying, yes, there can be detours here or there, and you keep doing those course corrections along the path, etc., but you keep moving towards that. So I think that's probably the most important thing. Then the second thing I will also feel is finding the right kind of partners, and partnership is at all levels. I mean, who you start the company with, who you employ, who you take the capital from, who are your early customers, kind of it. I mean, are all of these like big picture kind of people, or can become big picture kind of people? Not everyone will think about all the angles. Everyone's responsibilities are different, but do they get excited about the big picture, kind of it? I think that becomes very important. And Priya also, I think we have been very blessed. I mean, and there's a lot of differences that we are doing compared to my previous startup. Sometimes the question that I get asked is, oh, you're a serial entrepreneur, does it come easy? Actually, it comes hard, because you try to apply the same things that worked earlier, and you might have that sort of a compulsion to do the same things, and it might not work over here. So you have to be very conscious about some of these things. And here, the team that we have built is, I'm super proud of the team. And we have done it differently, because these are all very smart people who might have various different options, kind of it. So here we tell them that here we are never in a hurry, kind of it. Ki, oh, we need to just double the strength right now. We keep talking to people, and we also try to find those people who get inspired by the work that we are doing. And so the right kind of smarts and the right kind of motivation, that helps a lot. Similarly, on the capital side, we have been very fortunate. I mean, we raised our sort of the pre-seed round from Leo Capital. Again, the people over there, I've known them for a very long time. No, very patient people, right? It is not about, hey, as I said, when you ask the question, what you are building, if you had asked me 6 months ago, I might not have said this. So think about it. Hey, 2 years ka road. I mean, I don't know. So you are in such a stage, and so people need to understand. And typically, people who have done something of their own, who have traversed those kind of journeys, are able to appreciate. They, as long as they have the trust in your capability and on your intent, etc., they let you do. Of course, you discuss things, etc., and sometimes new data points ask for taking new decisions, and it's not like cast in stone, oh, 2 years ago we said this, so we cannot deviate from that. No, it's not about that. When the new input comes in, you adjust to the new realities, etc. But we have been very fortunate to get those kind of people over here who have been very patient. Similarly, when it comes to customers, etc., as I said, we have been very sort of picky. Not that like there are a lot of choices, but who you approach at that time, you have a choice. I mean, these are the set of people that I want to approach, etc. Kind of. So we have had that kind of a thing in mind. No, this kind of a person we want to go, and many of our early companies, the promoters, etc., know us very well, and they have been super supportive, kind of it, and they are there for the long term. Right? It's not about a, you told me this, what is happening about that. We almost never talk about that. We almost always talk about, hey, what are you doing, what's exciting, have you looked at this, have you looked at that, and it's very energizing having such kind of people around. So So $2 million, I mean, kind of a revenue you're looking. So I think all of these things sort of come together, and then these numbers start becoming sort of side effect. I always believe that. So you water, you take care of the roots and the soil, and the flower will happen. You cannot focus on the flower to get the flower, right? So that's what you need to do.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Rohit.